I'll soon be quite dead at last, in spite of all. Perhaps next month. Then it will be the month of April, or of May. For the year is still young. 1,000 little signs tell me so. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps I shall survive St. John the Baptist Day and even the 14th of July, Festival of Freedom. Indeed, I would not put it past me to pant on to the Transfiguration, not to speak of the Assumption. But I do not think so. I do not think I am wrong in saying that these rejoicings will take place in my absence this year. I have that feeling. I've had it now for some days, and I credit it. I could die today if I wished, merely by making a little effort. But it's just as well to let myself die quietly, without rushing things. Of course, I'll still have my little fits of impatience from time to time. I must be on my guard against them during the next fortnight or 3 weeks. Without exaggeration, to be sure. Quietly crying and laughing, without working myself up into a state. Yes, I shall be natural at last. I shall suffer more, then less, without drawing any conclusions. I shall pay less heed to myself. I shall be neither hot nor cold anymore. I shall be tepid. I shall die tepid, without enthusiasm. I shall not watch myself die. That would spoil everything. Have I watched myself live? Have I ever complained? And why rejoice now? I am content, necessarily, but not to the point of clapping my hands. I am satisfied. There, I have enough. I am repaid. I need nothing more. Let me say before I go any further that I forgive nobody. I wish them all an atrocious life, and then the fires and ice of hell, and in the execrable generations to come, an honored name. I usedn't to need anyone. Just to myself. Stories. Years and years of stories. Till the need came on me for someone to listen to me. Anyone, a stranger to be near me. Imagine he hears me, what I am now. Father, you wouldn't know me now. You'd be sorry you ever had me. Huh? But you were that already. A washout. That's the last I heard from you. A washout. Are you coming for a dip? No. Come on, come on. No. Glare, stump to door, turn, glare. A washout. That's all you are, a washout. Again. Slam life shut like that. Washout. Wish to Christ she had. My mother never refused to see me. That is, she never refused to receive me, for it was many a long day since she'd seen anything at all. I shall try and speak calmly. We were so old, she and I. She had had me so young that we were like a couple of old cronies, sexless, unrelated, with the same memories, the same rancors, the same expectations. She never called me son. Fortunately, I couldn't have borne it. But Dan. I don't know why my name is not Dan. Dan was my father's name, perhaps. Yes. Perhaps she took me for my father. I took her for my mother, and she took me for my father. Dan, do you remember the day I saved the swallow? Dan, do you remember the day you buried the ring? I remembered. I mean, I knew more or less what she was talking about, and if I hadn't always taken part personally in the scene she evoked, it was just as if I had. I called her Mag when I had to call her something. And I called her Mag because, for me, without my knowing why, a letter G abolished the syllable ma, and as it were, spat upon it, better than any other letter could have done. And at the same time, I satisfied a deep and doubtless unacknowledged need, the need to have a ma, that is a mother, and to proclaim it audibly. For before you say Mag, you say ma, inevitably. And da, in my part of the world, means father. Besides, for me, the question did not arise at the period I'm worming into now. I mean the question as to whether to call her Ma, Mag, or Countess Kaka, she having been for countless years as deaf as a post. No, she knew it was me by my smell. Her shrunken, hairy old face lit up. She was happy to smell me. She jabbered away with her rattler dentures and most of the time didn't realize what she was saying. Anyone but myself would have been lost in this clattering gabble, which can only have ceased during a brief instance of unconsciousness. In any case, I didn't come to listen to her. I got into communication with her by knocking on her skull. 1 knock meant yes, 2, no, 3, I don't know, 4, money, 5, goodbye. I was hard put to ram this code into a ruined and frantic understanding, but I did it in the end. That she should confuse yes, no, I don't know, and goodbye were all the same to me. I confused them myself. But that she should associate the 4 knocks with anything but money was something to be avoided at all costs. During the period of training, therefore, at the same time as I administered the 4 knocks on the skull, I stuck a banknote under her nose or in her mouth. The innocence of my heart, for she seemed to have lost, if not absolutely all notion of mensuration, at least the faculty of counting beyond 2. It was too far for her. The distance was too great from 1 to 4. By the time she came to the 4th knock, she imagined she was still at the 2nd. The first 2 having been erased from her memory as completely as if they'd never been felt. She must have thought I was saying no to her all the time, whereas nothing could have been further from my purpose. Enlightened then by these considerations, I looked for and finally found a more effective means of putting the idea of money into her head. Now, this consisted of replacing the 4 knocks of the index knuckle by 1 or more, according to my needs, thumps of the fist on her skull. That she understood. In any case, I didn't come for the money. I took her money, but I didn't come for that. My mother. I don't think too harshly of her. Back to that far day. Oh, any far day. And from its dim, granted ground and its things to the sky. The eyes raised and back again. Raised again and back again. And the feet going nowhere, only somehow always home. In the morning, out from home. In the evening, back home again. Up bright and early that day. I was young then, feeling awful, and out. Mother hanging out of the window in her nightdress, weeping and waving. Nice, fresh morning. Bright too early as so often. Feeling really awful. Very violent. Sky would soon darken and rain fall and go on falling all day till evening, then blue and sun again a second, then night. Feeling all this, how violent and the kind of day, I stopped and turned. So, back with bowed head, on the lookout for snare, slug, or worm. Great love in my heart, too, for all things still and rooted. Bushes, boulders, and the like, too numerous to mention. Even the flowers of the field. Not for the world, when in my right senses, would I ever touch one to pluck it. Or as a bird now, or a butterfly, fluttering about and getting in my way. All moving things getting in my path. A slug now getting under my feet. No mercy. Not that I would go out of my way to get at them, no. Often at a distance they seem quite still, and the next minute they were upon me. Birds, with my piercing sight, I've seen flying so high and so far off, they seemed at rest. And a moment later, they were all about me. Crows have done this. Ducks are perhaps the worst. To be suddenly stamping and stumbling in the midst of ducks or hens, any class of poultry. Few things are worse. Nor would I go out of my way to avoid such things when avoidable. No. I will simply not go out of my way. Though I have never in my life been on my way anywhere. Not simply on my way. And in this way I have gone through great thickets, bleeding, deep into bogs, water too, even the sea in some moods, and been carried out of my course or driven back, so as not to drown. And that's perhaps the way I shall die at last, if they don't catch me. I mean drowned. Or on fire. Yes, perhaps that's how I shall do it at last. Walking furious headlong into fire and dying burned to bits. Then I raised my eyes and saw my mother still in the window waving me back or on, I don't know, or just waving. Sad, helpless love. I heard faintly her cries. The window frame was green, pale, and the house wall grey, and my mother white, and so thin I could see past her into the dark of the room. And on all that full the not long risen sun, and all small because of the distance, very pretty really, the whole thing, I remember it. The old grey, and then the thin green surround, and a thin white against the dark. If only she could have stayed still and let me look at it. No, for once in my life I wanted to stand and look at something. I couldn't have heard her waving and fluttering and swaying in and out of the window as though she were doing exercises. For all I know, she might have been. Not bothering about me at all. No tenacity of purpose. That's another thing I didn't like about her. 1 week it would be exercises, the next prayers and Bible reading, the next gardening, the next playing the piano and singing. That was awful. And then just lying around, resting, always changing. Oh, nothing mattered to me. I was always out. But let me get on with this day I have hit on to begin with. And the other would have done just as well. Yes, on with it, out of my way, and on to the next. Enough of my mother for the moment. For a time then, all well. No trouble, no birds at me. Nothing across my path except in a great distance, a white horse, followed by a boy, or it might have been a small man or woman. This is the only completely white horse I remember. What I believe the Germans call a schimmel. Oh, I was very quick as a boy, picked up a lot of hard knowledge. Schimmel. Nice word for an English speaker. The sun was full upon it as shortly before on my mother, and it seemed to have a red band or stripe running down its side. I thought perhaps a belly band, perhaps the horse was being taken somewhere to be harnessed to a trap or such like. It crossed my path a long way off, then vanished behind greenery, I suppose. All I noticed was the sudden appearance of the horse, then disappearance. It was bright white with the sun on it. I'd never seen such a horse, though often heard of them. I never saw another. White, I must say, has always affected me strongly. All white things, sheets, walls, and so on. Even flowers. And then just white. The thought of white, without more. But let me get on with this day and get it over. All well then for a time, just the violence and then this white horse. When suddenly I flew into most savage rage, really blinding. Why this sudden rage, I really do not know. These sudden rages, they made my life a misery. Many other things too have done this. My sore throat, for example, I've never known what it is to be without a sore throat. And the rages were the worst. like a great wind suddenly rising inside. No, I can't describe. It wasn't the violence getting worse in any case, nothing to do with that. Some days I would be feeling violent all day, never have a rage. Other days quite quiet for me, and have 4 or 5. No, there's no accounting for it. There's no accounting for anything. For a mind like the one I always had, always on the alert against itself. There was a time I tried to get relief by beating my head against something, but I gave it up. The best thing I found was to start running. Perhaps I should mention here that I was a very slow walker. I didn't dally or loiter in any way, just walked very slowly. Little short steps in the feet, very slow through the air. On the other hand, I must have been quite one of the fastest runners the world has ever seen over a short distance. 5 or 10 yards in a second I was there. I could not go on at that speed. Not for breathlessness. It was mental. All is mental. Figments. Now, the jog trot, on the other hand, I could no more do that than I could fly. No, with me all was slow, and then these flashes or gushes. Fence the pent. That was one of those things I used to say to myself over and over as I went along. Vent the pent, vent the pent. Fortunately, my father died when I was a boy. Otherwise, I might have been a professor. He had his heart set on it. Oh, a very fair scholar I was, too. No thought, but a great memory. One time I told him about Milton's cosmology. Way up in the mountains we were, resting against a huge rock, looking out to sea. That impressed him greatly. Love, too, often in my thoughts when a boy, but not a great deal compared to other boys. Kept me awake, I found. Never loved anyone, I think. I'd remember, except in my dreams. And there it was animals, dream animals, oh, not what you see walking about the country. I couldn't describe them. Lovely creatures they were. White, mostly. Perhaps in a way it's a pity. A good woman might have been the making of me. I might be sprawled in the sun now, sucking my pipe, patting the bottoms of the 3rd generation, looked up to and respected, wondering what there was for dinner, instead of stravaiging the same old roads and all weathers. I was never much of a one for new ground. No, I regret nothing. All I regret is having been born. Dying such a long, tiresome business I always found. But let me get on now from where I left off. The White Horse and the Rage. No connection, I suppose. Well, after the White Horse and the Rage, I don't know. Just on. And then, I suppose, the slow turn, wheeling more and more to the one or other hand, till facing home, then home. Ah, my father and mother, to think they are probably in paradise. They were so good. Let me go to hell, that's all I ask, and go on cursing them there, and they look down and hear me. Ha! That might take some of the shine off their bliss. Yes, I believe all their blather about the life to come. It cheers me up. And unhappiness like mine, there's no annihilating that. I was mad, of course, and still am, but harmless. I passed for harmless, that's a good one. Not, of course, that I was really mad, just strange, a little strange. And with each passing year, a little stranger. There can be few stranger creatures than me going about at the present day. My father. Did I kill him too, as well as my mother? Perhaps in a way I did. Oh, I can't go back in that now. The questions rise up on me. as I go along, leaving me very confused. Ah, breaking up I am. Suddenly they are there. No, they float up out of an old depth and hover and linger before they die away. Questions that when I was in my right mind would not have survived 1 second, but atomized they would have been before as much as formed, atomized. In twos often they came, hard, one upon the other thus. How can I go on another day? And then how did I ever go on another day? And did I kill my father? And then did I ever kill anyone? To the general from the particular, I suppose you might say. Question and answer, too, in a way, very addling. I strive with them as best I can, quickening my step when they come on, tossing my head from side to side and up and down, staring agonizedly at this and that, increasing my murmurs to a scream. These are helps. But it should not be necessary. Ah, something is wrong here. If it was the end, I would not so much mind. How often have I said in my life before some new awful thing, it is the end, and it was not the end. And yet, the end cannot be far off now. I shall fall as I go along, and stay down, or lie, curled up for the night as usual among the rocks, and before morning be gone. Oh, I know that I too shall cease and be as when I was not yet, only all over, instead of being in store. That makes me happy. Often now my murmur falters and dies, and I weep for happiness as I go along, and for the love of this old earth that has carried me so long, and whose uncomplainingness will soon be mine. Just under the surface I shall be, altogether at first, then separate and drift through all the earth, and then perhaps, in the end, through a cliff into the sea. Something of me. A ton of worms to an acre. That's a wonderful thought. A ton of worms. I believe it. Where did I get it? From a dream? Or a book read in a nook when a boy? Or a word overheard as I went along? Or in me all along and kept under till it could give me joy? Oh, these are the horrid thoughts I have to contend with in the way I have just said. Now, is there nothing to add to this day with the white horse and white mother in the window, before I pass on to another day at a later time? Anything to add before I pass on in time, skipping hundreds and even thousands of days in the way I couldn't for time, but had to get through somehow, until I came to the one I'm coming to now. No, nothing. All is gone, but mother in the window, the violence, rage, and rain. So, on to this second day and get it over and out of my way and on to the next. What happens now is I am set upon and pursued by a family or tribe, I don't know, of stoats. Most extraordinary thing. I think they were stoats. Indeed, if I may say so, I was fortunate to get off with my life. Anyone else would have been bitten and bled to death. Perhaps sucked white, like a rabbit. I know I could never think, but if I could have and had then, I would have just lain down and let myself be destroyed like the rabbit does. But let me start, as always, with the morning and the getting out. When a day comes back, whatever the reason, its morning and its evening, too, are there, though in themselves quite unremarkable. The going out and the coming home. There's the remarkable thing I find. So up then in the grey of dawn, very weak and shaky after an atrocious night, little dreaming what lay in store, out and off. What time of year? I really do not know. Does it matter? Not wet, really, but dripping. Everything dripping. The day might rise, did it know? Drip, drip all day long. No sun, no change of light. Dim all day, and still, not a breath. Till night. Then black, and a little wind. I saw some stars as I neared home. But I was hardly down the stairs and out into the air when the stick fell from my hands and I sank down onto my knees on the ground and then forward on my face, most extraordinary thing. And after a little over on my back. I could never lie on my face for any length of time, much as I loved it, but made me feel sick. And lay there half an hour, perhaps, with my arms along my sides, the palms of my hands against the pebbles, and my eyes wide open, straying over the sky. Now, was this my first experience of this kind? That is the question that immediately assails one. Falls I had had in plenty, of the kind after which, unless a limb broken, you pick yourself up and go on cursing God and man. Oh, very different from this. But so much life gone from knowledge, how know when all began. All the variants of the one, that one by one their venom staling, follow one upon another all lifelong till you succumb. So that in some ways even olden things each time are first things. No two breaths the same, all are going over and over, all once and never more. Over, over. There's a soft place in my heart for all that is over. No, for the being over. I love the word. Words have been my only loves, not many. Often all day long as I went along, I would be saying it. And sometimes I would be saying, Vero, oh, Vero. Oh, but for those awful fidgets I've always had, I would have spent my life in a big, empty, echoing room with a big old pendulum clock, just listening and dozing. The case opened so that I could see the swinging, my eyes moving to and fro, lead weights dangling lower and lower, till I got up out of my chair and wound them up again once a week. The third day was the look I got from the roadman. Suddenly I see that now. A ragged old brute, bent double down in the ditch, leaning on his spade or whatever it was, leering round and up at me from under the brim of his slouch. A red mouth. How it is, I wonder, I saw him at all. That's more like it. The day I saw the look I got from Balf, I went in terror of him as a child. Now he is dead, and I resemble him. But let us pass on from these old scenes and come to these and my reward. Then it will not be as now, day after day, on, out, round, back, in, like leaves turning or torn out and thrown, crumpled away, for a long unbroken time without before or after, light or dark, from or toward or at. The old half-knowledge of when and where gone and of what, but kinds of things still, all at once, all going, till nothing. There never was anything, never can be. Life and death, all nothing, that kind of thing. Except a voice, dreaming and droning on all round. That is something. A voice that was once in your mouth. Well, once out on the road and free of the property, what then? I really do not know. The next thing I found myself up in the bracken, lashing about with a stick, making the drops fly, and cursing filthy language, using the same words over and over. I hope nobody heard me. Throat very bad. To swallow was torment. And something wrong with an ear. I kept poking at it without relief. Old wax, perhaps, pressing against the drum. Extraordinarily still over the land. And in me, too, all quite still. A coincidence. Why the curses were pouring out of me, I really do not know. No, that's a foolish thing to say. And the lashing about with a stick. What possessed me, mild and weak, to be doing that as I struggled along? Is the stoats now? No. First I'd just sink down again and disappear in the ferns. Up to my waist they were as I went along. Harsh things, these great ferns. Like starched, very woody, terrible stalks. Take the skin off your legs through your trousers. And the holes they hide. Break your leg if you're not careful. Fall and vanish from view. You could lie there for weeks and no one would hear you. I often thought of that up there in the mountains. No, that is a foolish thing to say. Just went on, my body doing its best without. I once took advantage of being at the seaside to lay in a store of sucking stones. They were pebbles, but I call them stones. Yes, on this occasion I laid in a considerable store. I distributed them equally between my 4 pockets and sucked them, turn and turn about. Now this raised a problem which I first solved in the following way. I had, say, 16 stones, 4 in each of 4 pockets, those being the 2 pockets of my trousers and the 2 pockets of my greatcoat. Taking a stone from the right pocket of my greatcoat and putting it in my mouth, I replaced it in the right pocket of my greatcoat by a stone from the right pocket of my trousers, which I replaced by a stone in the left pocket of my trousers, which I replaced by a stone from the left pocket of my greatcoat, which I replaced by the stone that was in my mouth as soon as I had finished sucking it. Thus there were still 4 stones in each of my 4 pockets, but not quite the same stones. And when the desire to suck took hold of me again, I drew again on the right pocket of my greatcoat, certain of not taking the same stone as the last time, and while I sucked it, I rearranged the other stones in the way I have just described, and so on. But this solution did not satisfy me fully, for it did not escape me that by an extraordinary hazard, the 4 stones circulating thus might always be the same 4, as a result of which, far from sucking 16 stones turn and turn about, I was really only sucking 4, and always the same turn and turn about. But I shuffled them well in my pockets before I began to suck, and again while I sucked before transferring in the hope of obtaining a more general circulation of the stones from pocket to pocket. This was only a makeshift, and could not long content a man like me. So I began to look for something else. And the first thing I hit upon was that I might do better to transfer the stones 4 by 4 instead of 1 by 1. That is to say, during the sucking, to take the 3 stones remaining in the right pocket of my greatcoat and replace them by the 4 in the right pocket of my trousers, and these by the 4 in the left pocket of my trousers, and these by the 4 in the left pocket of my greatcoat, and finally these by the 3 from the right pocket of my greatcoat, plus the 1, as soon as I finished sucking it, that was in my mouth. Yes. It seemed to me at first that by so doing I would arrive at a better result. But on further reflection I had to change my mind and confess that the circulation of the stones 4 by 4 came to exactly the same thing as the circulation 1 by 1. For if I was certain of finding each time in the right pocket of my greatcoat 4 stones totally different from their immediate predecessors, the possibility nevertheless remained of my always chancing on the same stone within each group of 4, and consequently of my sucking not 16 stones as I wished, but in fact 4 only, and always the same turn and turn about. So I had to seek elsewhere than in the mode of circulation, for no matter how I allowed the stones to circulate, I always ran the same risk. I finally reached a solution, inelegant, assuredly, but sound. All that was necessary was to put, for example, to begin with, say, 6 stones in the right pocket of my greatcoat or supply pocket, 5 in the right pocket of my trousers, and 5 in the left pocket of my trousers. Now that makes a lot. Twice 5, 10, plus 6, 16, and none, but none remained, in the left pocket of my greatcoat which for the time being remained empty. Good. Now I can begin to suck. Watch me closely. I take a stone from the right pocket of my greatcoat, suck it, stop sucking it, put it in the left pocket of my greatcoat, the one empty. I take a second stone from the right pocket of my greatcoat, suck it, put it in the left pocket of my greatcoat, and so on, until the right pocket of my greatcoat is empty, and the 6 stones I have just sucked one after the other are all in the left pocket of my greatcoat. Pausing then, and concentrating, so as not to make a balls of it, I transfer to the right pocket of my greatcoat, in which there are no stones left, the 5 stones in the right pocket of my trousers, which I replace by the 5 stones in the left pocket of my trousers, which I replace by the 6 stones in the left pocket of my greatcoat. At this stage, then, the left pocket of my greatcoat is again empty, and the right pocket of my greatcoat is again supplied, and in the right way, that is to say, with other stones than those I have just sucked. These other stones I then begin to suck one after the other, and to transfer, as I go along, to the left pocket of my greatcoat, being absolutely certain, as far as one can be in an affair of this kind, that I am not sucking the same stones as a moment before, but others. And when the right pocket of my greatcoat is again empty, and the 5 stones I have just sucked are all, without exception, in the left pocket of my greatcoat, I then proceed to the same redistribution as a moment before, or similar redistribution. That is to say, I transfer to the right pocket of my greatcoat, now again available, the 5 stones in the right pocket of my trousers, which are replaced by the 6 stones in the left pocket of my trousers, which are replaced by the 5 stones in the left pocket of my greatcoat. And there I am, ready to begin again. Do I have to go on? No. For it is clear after the next series of sucks and transfers, I shall be back to where I started. That is to say, with the first 6 stones back in the supply pocket, the next 5 in the right pocket of my stinking old trousers, and finally the last 5 in the left pocket of same. And my 16 stones will have been sucked once at least, in impeccable succession. Not one sucked twice, not one left unsucked. But deep down I didn't give a tinker's curse. For it was all the same to me whether I sucked a different stone each time or the same stone till the end of time. For they all tasted exactly the same. And if I had collected 16, it wasn't to suck them turn and turn about, but simply to have a little store so as never to be without. And deep down I didn't give a fiddler's damn about being without. When they were all gone, they would be all gone. I wouldn't be any the worse off, or hardly any. So the solution to which I rallied in the end was to throw away all the stones but one, which I kept now in one pocket, now in another, which I of course soon lost, or threw away, or gave away, or swallowed. Stories, stories. I never finished any of them. I never finished anything. Everything always went on forever. A Tuesday scowls, a Wednesday growls, a Thursday curses, a Friday howls, a Saturday snores, a Sunday yawns, a Monday mourns, a Monday mourns. And the poor old lousy old earth, my earth, and my father's and my mother's, and my father's fathers, and my mother's mothers, and my father's mothers, and my mother's fathers, and my father's mother's fathers, and my mother's father's mothers, and my father's father's mothers, and my mother's mother's fathers, and my father's father's fathers, and my mother's mother's mothers, and other people's fathers and mothers. An excrement. The crocuses, and the larch turning green every year a week before the others, and the pastures red with uneaten sheep's placentas, and the long summer days, and the new-mown hay, and the wood pigeon in the morning, and the cuckoo in the afternoon, and the corncrake in the evening, and the wasps and the jam, and the smell of the gorse, and the look of the gorse, and the apples falling, and the children walking in the dead leaves, and the larch turning brown a week before the others, and the chestnuts falling, and the howling winds, and the sea breaking over the pier, the first fires, and the hooves on the road, and the consumptive postman whistling the roses are blooming in Piccadilly, and the standard oil lamps, and of course the snow, and to be sure the sleet, and bless your heart, the slush. And every 4th year, the February debacle, and the endless April showers, and the crocuses, and the whole bloody business starting all over again. A turd. And if I was to begin it all over again, knowing what I know now, the result would be the same. And if I was to begin all over again a second time, knowing what I would know then, the result would be the same. And if I was to begin it all over again 100 times, knowing each time a little more than the time before, the result would always be the same. And the 100th life is the first, and the 100 lives as one. The cat's flux. The end is in the beginning, and yet you go on. Perhaps I could go on with my story, begin another. Perhaps I could throw myself onto the floor and dig my nails into the cracks and drag myself forward by my fingers. It'll be the end, and there I'll be, wondering what can have brought it on and why it was so long in coming. There I'll be in the old refuge, alone against the silence and stillness. If I can hold my peace and sit quiet, it'll be all over with sound and motion. All over and done with. I'll have called my father, even twice or 3 times, in case he hadn't heard me the first time or the second. And then, all kinds of fantasies that I'm being watched. A rat, steps, breath held, and then babble words like the solitary child who turns himself into children, 2, 3, so as to be together and whisper together in the dark. Moment upon moment, pattering down like the millet grains of that old Greek. And all life long you wait for that to mount up to a life. Oh, let's get it over. It's too late. Perhaps it's too late. Perhaps it's a dream. All a dream. That would surprise me. I'll wake in the silence, never sleep again. 'Twill be I, or dream again. Dream of the silence, a dream silence, full of murmurs. I don't know. That's all words. Never wake. They're going to fail me. I know that well. They're going to abandon me. You must go on. That's all I know. To be the silence for a moment, a good few moments, or it'll be mine, the lasting one that didn't last, that still lasts. It'll be I. You must go on. I can't go on. You must go on. I can't go on. I'll go on. I say to myself sometimes, you must learn to suffer better than that if you want them to weary of punishing you one day. I say to myself sometimes, you must be there better than that if you want them to let you go one day. But I feel too old and too far to form new habits. Good. It'll never end. I'll never go. Then one day, suddenly it ends, it changes. I don't understand. It dies, or it's me. I don't understand that either. I ask the words that remain. Sleeping, waking, morning, evening. They have nothing to say. I open the door of the cell and go. I am so bowed I only see my feet if I open my eyes. And between my legs, a little trail of black dust. I say to myself that the earth is extinguished, though I never saw it lit. It's easy going, When I fall, I'll weep for happiness. Asylum under my tread, all this day. Their muffled revels as the flesh falls, breaking without fear or favor, wind. Their gantelope of sense and nonsense run, taken by the maggots for what they are. They gave birth the stride of a grave. A light gleams an instant, and then it is night once more. Moments for nothing, now as always. Time was never, and time is over. Reckoning closed, and story ended. Well, there we are. There I am. That's enough.